This broadcast of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series is brought to you by Jaguar Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert. For oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec, visit www.malwar-transport.ca. And for an expert and professional trucking insurance firm specializing in property and casualty insurance solutions for freight across Quebec, Canada and the United States, visit www.transportexpert.com. Good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to round 3 of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, brought to you by Jaguar Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert and live exclusively via TRTN. As always, I'm Regan Clark. You join us here as we're over halfway through our American leg of our 3-country journey through this fantastic little series here, right here in the heart of Austin, Texas, in the Lone Star State, the United States of America, here at the Circuit of the Americas. Founded in 2010 and ultimately opened for the 2012 United States Grand Prix, the Circuit of the Americas in the modern day is comprised of 3.4 miles and 20 turns of FIA Grade 1. It holds a unique position as the only American track in 2025 to feature in both Formula 1, MotoGP and the World Endurance Championship, with the United States Grand Prix running here in both Formula 1 and MotoGP, as well as the Lone Star Le Mans Series running out of the Circuit of the Americas since last year's season in the World Endurance Championship. Elsewhere, it hosts races for NASCAR's Cup and Xfinity Series, as well as the GT World Challenge Americas GT World Challenge at COTA, which has ran since 2013. It also has featured the Trans Am Series' Austin Speed Tour since 2015 and Moto America's Superbikes at Texas since 2015 as well. It is a bizarre circuit birthed out of the idea to be the permanent homestead of the United States Grand Prix, and as such it plays heavily into its role as a Grand Prix racing circuit, borrowing homage to plenty of the sport's all-time greatest. There's plenty of inspirations to be found around this track, and some describe it as almost a chimera of the greatest hits of European and international Grand Prix racing circuits, all brought into the melting pot here in Austin, Texas. So as we head into round 3 of the championship, taking a look at where we're at on the calendar here, with 2 rounds under our belt already, we'll have a firmer understanding of how the championship's set to pan out. But here, as we're into the final 2 races in the United States, before we head over the Atlantic Ocean over to Great Britain at the home of the Jaguar XK, we find ourselves here at the Circuit of the Americas. You'll find us next week at Laguna Seca for what I'm told is going to be a very, very lively round indeed to bring us out of the American chapter, still on the charts for 60-minute races. Looking in then after 2 rounds of the championship with the drop point system in effect, more to touch on that in a moment's time, we find Christian Lebay in the lead by 4 points to a joint second between Giovanni Badiali and Byron Forrest with 36 points apiece, the 2 joint seconds for the rest of the podium positions. Kevin Quain and Hayden Prodger joint 4th place towards the back of the top 5. Then outside of the top 5, only divided by 3 points away from a top 5 spot, there is the man on screen, Richard Cecil, in the number 5 with 30 points. He 3 points up the road from Carl Martel and 6 points up the road from Timo de Tosto in 8th place with 24 points, and a joint 9th to bring us to the end of our top 10 discussion, Clinton Bourne and Carl David Bourdreau with 22 points apiece. Well, you have to forgive us there as the green flags were temporarily brought out. But let's get on to the discussion right now of the itinerary for today's race. And looking into things here, we've got the season regs for today's round. We're back in the standard format, 3 times on the trot now. We're in the middle of a 20-minute free practice session before we head on to 20 minutes of qualifying here at the Circuit of the Americas, and then on to an hour-long race, 1 mandatory pit stop for fuel and tyres. Looking at the new drivers for today, we have 1 new attendee, the number 96 of Casey Miles, racing for the United States here at round 3 of the championship. Now, to touch on this brand new system, the drop point system is now active from this round onwards. Each driver's single worst result will no longer contribute to the championship, and this is 1 drop round per season. This will update after every race to reflect the current worst or weakest result from driver to driver. It's in efforts to bring everything a lot closer, and as you've just seen there from the discussion of the championship standings after only 3 rounds in, it is incredibly airtight, even after a double race winning endeavour here, back-to-back wins as we head into round 3 of the championship for Christian Lebay. Could it be 3 on the trot here, starting things off in the American chapter with a hat-trick of victories is certainly something on the mind of the number 119. We'll see later on in today's session whether or not that is the case. Right now, Richard Cecil finds himself second fastest in the number 5 on his way currently out through turns 9 and 10. Let's get a look around track here to see a few of the drivers. Clinton Bourne is one to discuss, as well as having a look at some of those qualifying predictions. It was looking fairly strong for the Australian talent, and coming out of that last round of the championship at Watkins Glen reveals some results to us here. We try and look for Clinton Bourne. It was a down and out result for him. It was 13th place. Ultimately, that has since been dropped away, still giving him only the 7th place points contribution that we had at the season premiere in Indianapolis. That puts him on level pegging at the moment at the back of the top 10 with Carl David Bourdreau, who saw an improvement over the course of round 2, up from 9th to 7th, with that previous result being dropped away. Looking at where things have definitely developed in the course of the last couple of races, one would definitely have to take a look back in the direction of the current fight for those podium positions. Byron Forrest versus Gio Badiali. Now, Gio did make that appearance in Watkins Glen. It was a shame that he couldn't, but so I have been told here, and so I've been able to see over the course of the last couple of hours leading up into today's event, I am not to be left alone this time, because Giovanni Badiali is back in the fight, still second place in the championship, albeit joint second place to this man on screen here, the number 824 of Byron Forrest, currently making his way in through Sector 1, an area that some have described as almost a mixture between Sector 1 at Suzuka and Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit slapped together to form the basis of this opening flurry of corners. Currently on his way down to the 3/4 mile back straight we have here at the Circuit of the Americas. It's going to be prime time for some slipstream racing. Now, of course, everyone still using the Jaguar AJ V8 engine here. There'll be no differences from platform to platform. We're all using that same 5-litre naturally aspirated motor, as has been around for the Jaguar Land Rover group since 1996 in its earliest form. I'll have to try and get a look on board, I should say, with the telemetry for Byron Forrest a little later on in this free practice session, because one is definitely curious to find out, and this has been a recurring subject on TRTN for some time, what is the fastest car in a straight line on ACC. One car we've erroneously never been able to gather data for, simply because of its rarity in mainline competition, is, as it would turn out, the Jaguar XK GT3. So this is the perfect opportunity when in Rome, or I suppose when in Texas, best to make these results happen. Catch on board with the nearest car to that area. As a matter of fact, it's Carl David Bourdreau. So let's get a look on board, and hopefully that'll give us some kind of indication here. Now, what you're looking at there, that's kilometers per hour on the speedometer. Currently making his way down towards turn 12. This is also going to be a major overtaking spot. Having a look here, 260 there we saw out of Bourdreau before he got down onto the brakes in towards turn 12. And even then, he was running things a little close to the line past the exit of turn 12, getting back on board with the nearest driver to start another flying lap here to give us a little bit of an understanding of the track at hand. Who better to get on board with then than Alex Albert in the number 36. Got Jason Bush in chat as well. For some of you who may not know Jason Bush, he was the Season 2 champion of the NLRL Sunday League, as covered by us here on TRTN and as sponsored by Jaguar Transport in the past as well. He chimes in chat with saying that the fastest is undeniably the Lexus. Paul Ricard data will show the fastest even with a full wing by a good margin. And so that has definitely been a disputed point just based off of the data we had. And the data we took was back at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. And that recorded the Lexus in a joint second, as a matter of fact, with Ford and BMW at 174 miles per hour. It was a single mile an hour difference that gave Aston Martin the current TRTN speed record at 175. We'll have a little look here with the Jaguars just to see just how quick that was in metric here. So that was only about 161 miles an hour we saw out of the Jaguars. And admittedly, even with 3/4 of a mile of back straight, the Jaguar is not going to be able to get to maximum straight line speed just by nature that it isn't going to be running the lowest of downforce setups, especially to compensate for that first and final sector. So put all of your eggs into the basket of straight line speed here at the Circuit of the Americas is a naive folly. But nonetheless, it is going to play quite nicely into the hands of those willing to dare to experiment in such a way, as this will be absolute pay dirt. It will be walking past people on a low downforce setup on the ground that he's still nearby. The Lexus speed was with full wing. The BMW and the V12 were running low, claims Jason Bush. Well, we'd be more than happy to see the drivers come along and provide some new straight line speeds, because we would love to have the data as up to date as possible here on TRTN, as it's always something we come back to on a routine basis. It's what gives us the same argument time in, time out, and that's that Ford, BMW and Lexus are the straight line speed demons of ACC. Joining us in chat as well, we've got Elite Cassie, otherwise Cass Van Veltzen, and Soviet Mario in chat as well. So plenty of people from a variety of different series here. We're seeing drivers from all across the field of coverage here on TRTN gathering to watch the Jaguars here under the blazing heat of Austin, Texas. Across the line then goes Alex Albert after 20 corners. It is quite the mind freak, this track. Looking on board with the nearest driver on a valid flying lap, back on board, this time with Byron Forrest. He makes his way around this incredibly mind-boggling opening sector. Now, of course, we mentioned that some have described this as sort of a chimera between Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, and then the opening S's out of the first sector of the Suzuka International Racing Course. Only making his way out through turns 9 and 10 into turn 11. Now, in the past, when we've covered GT3 races here at the Circuit of the Americas, we've actually seen incidents come quite thick and fast at this area just because it is a deceptively tight corner. Now, the track map reveals, yes, it is an open hairpin left. You can see how wide it is on entry, but how deceptively tight the available usable room of the track is at the apex. It's what's led to many a fender bender here at turn 11. We do have quite exciting announcements. Of course, some of you may be curious over why we were not able to cover what would have been the next round of VSR Phoenix last Wednesday, and that would have been Silverstone, which we were thoroughly looking forward to. That's because Season 9 ultimately ended up being cancelled. However, good news, Season 10 is back up and running, and we'll be seeing that later on in this broadcast day, the 5th of November, 2025. Bonfire night, then fireworks for the arrival of a brand new season. Heading down through to turn 19 and towards turn 20. We'll get a full rundown of the track during the qualifying process, about 7 minutes and 20 seconds out. You watch here with Byron Forrest. Sadly, doesn't look to be an improvement this time around. Finds himself nearly 3/4 of a second off of the beat for his personal best. We do see, though, on his way back down towards the line, he is back up and running here, already onto 300. So carried better momentum past the exit of turn 20, but it is very, very hard to keep that momentum over the course of 20 corners here of FIA Grade 1 of varying shapes and sizes. You see on board here with Forrest, down through turn 2. Through to turn 3, 4, now to turn 5, in into turn 6. This is going to be very, very quickly coming at us here. In through turn 7 coming up now. This very sharp kink to the left, deceptively sharp there. You can see that the track limits sneak up on you very, very quickly. It's a repeat concern out of drivers, especially in qualifying, as the track limits and just how stringent they've been for GT3s, whether or not it's been a coding error for the track limits in this game, or whether or not it is really quite true to reality in terms of GT World Challenge. In through to turn 11. We've got Soviet Mario in chat asking, are you commentating over NLRL Bathurst in a couple of weeks? Absolutely. The 4 hours of Bathurst, I'm thoroughly looking forward to that. It is going to be a brilliant event. Returning from last season as well, and from the season before that. So this is quite the long-standing legacy event that's been around since GHR's XEC, of which the Console Endurance Series is a successor, Chapter 2. It's always brilliant to have these long-standing events, and I think 4 hours in Bathurst, we're really hitting that nice sweet spot. So thoroughly looking forward to that later down the line. I must say, so far this series, the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, has been quite a unique concept, one that I'm quite happy to see succeed in the modern day. I mean, it is hitting for quite a market niche. If you take a look at it on paper, not many people would find themselves inclined to want to drive what was otherwise an outlier to the GT3 field, even in its heyday. But it seems that we're really able to tap into these smaller gaps in the market, and as it turns out, you put them in a world of their own, and these Jaguars are really quite something to behold. We've had quite a few exciting rounds here for just a short amount of time in this season. 2 rounds to have been covered so far, Indianapolis and Watkins Glen, both of which gave us action-packed racing from start to finish. And seemingly we're on for a hat-trick here at the Circuit of the Americas. There is, of course, that fear with a track as large and as grandiose in nature as COTA as to whether or not we'll see racing anywhere near the variety that we saw back in Watkins Glen or Indianapolis, where they were smaller tracks designed for a different type of car. These are definitely out of their element here, these little Jaguars. The last time Jaguar ever touched Formula 1 was back in 2004, before they sold to Red Bull Racing for £1. At that time, they'd have never touched this circuit. The last time they would have ever touched a Grand Prix circuit in the United States would have been Indianapolis in 2004's United States Grand Prix. So perhaps time for a bizarre reuniting between Jaguar and a Grand Prix circuit of this variety. Now, the de facto home, of course, of the United States Grand Prix, one of 3 venues in North America to hold races for Formula One, the other 2 being the Miami Autodrome and the Las Vegas Street Circuit, with more potentially on the way. COTA is the only permanent mainstay for Formula One's hold in the United States of America. Down towards the line here is one of the drivers we saw make their debut last round, Vincent Simard, and number 120 across the line behind him there, Timo de Tosto in the 58, 4th and 9th. Already off to a great start for the 120, with qualifying just around the corner. 3.5 minutes left to go before the start of qualifying today. 20 minutes against the clock here, and what looks to be relatively hot conditions here at the Circuit of the Americas. Getting a look into where the timings are concerned, we do find ourselves with a very pleasant sight here, and that is for once to see that there is genuine competition up front, with the return of Giovanni Badiali exploiting what could be a little bit of a vulnerability out of Christian Lebay. But we'll see here down towards the line, the 119, back-to-back race wins so far this season across the checkered line, 74 thousandths of a second, and it yet remains between himself and the 998. So could we be seeing a little bit of an upset to the balance very firmly set in stone over the last 2 rounds here by Lebay? 24 degrees on track, albeit not the searingly hot temperatures we saw in the last bit of coverage here on TRTN. That would have been the Sunday League over on NLRL in Season 4, Round 2, where track temperatures were, believe it or not, upwards of 53 degrees on FIA Grade 2 tarmac. This is 24 degrees track. Looking at it here, about 18 degrees ambient, so a little bit on the milder side for Texan heat. Up through turn 9 and in towards turn 10, now towards turn 11. Getting a look to where we'll be further down the road from today. Of course, we're here in the Circuit of the Americas for round 3 of the championship. I am thoroughly looking forward to, though, that next round coming. Laguna Seca has proven to be quite a solid little track. Very, very difficult to get overtakes done in thick and fast, but it's a very technical track, deceptively hard to race in, but always provides some fantastic action. Not a lot of background really here on TRTM with the Circuit of the Americas. We have been to this track, of course, a few times. Namely, one such example that springs to mind was back at the, I think it was the 2nd or 3rd season of the NLRL Sunday League. Would have been the site of Tyler Vermack's first ever win in the Sunday League, but a post-race ruling incident took that away from him, giving the win to Diman Ivanov and the Aston Martin. We have been here before, but in cup racing, it is definitely breaching new grounds here. I'm not really sure what to expect of these Jaguars. So far, it has been very close competition at the front of the pack. Lebay versus Badiali. Bear in mind, these are just in the staging processes towards qualifying. These drivers are still technically warming up. And across the line goes Christian Lebay and silences any claims that he's getting challenged today by putting it from 74 thousandths to 433 thousandths in the opposite direction. So that's an improvement of over half a second for Christian Lebay, a 2:07.160, seemingly the fastest time of free practice today. Looking elsewhere on track, we see Vincent Simard on his way onto the 3/4 mile back straight between turns 11 and 12. Richard Cecil, who we were following on board with at the start of the session, is back into the pit lane. Timo de Tosto just joining Simard on his way down the back straight as we speak. See one of the new drivers on the block here, the number 96 of Casey Malles, making his debut here at round 3 of the championship. So a lot of expectations here for Malles. Of course, we have seen him before. He's one of the drivers at Team Raceline over on the NLRL Console Endurance Series, among other series. We have seen Malles' proficiencies before in the 96, but now we get to see what he can do by his lonesome in the confines of a very unorthodox car, the 2012 Jaguar XK G3. Without further ado then, on to the discussion of qualifying. 20 minutes against the clock already. Movement from the pit lane. The 119 springs into life. Following in his wake there, we can see among them the number 5 and the number 6, Clinton Bourne and Richard Cecil, and also Byron Forrest in the 824 to become our first 4 drivers out of the paddock. Following there, you can see is Vincent Simard in the foreground, that bright blue Emil Frey Racing livery on the number 120, making their way out of the paddock. On to the discussion of qualifying predictions, and with sparse amounts of available data, we don't have a comprehensive understanding of a top 10 at this time. The last data packet was retrieved yesterday at around 8 o'clock in the evening. And that gives us currently the outlook that Lebay is on for pole position. And get this, Clinton Bourne could be front row material here at the Circuit of the Americas. He found himself off by just about a second and a half, a little under a second and a half over the course of the qualifying data predictions. Looking further down the line, Richard Cecil predicted third, Daniel Poulin fourth, Anthony Cote in fifth, Alex Albert 6th, Stephen Black 7th, and Andrew Veldkamp in 8th. Now, this fails to factor in several other drivers into these considerations, among them, of course, being the elephant in the room, the return of Giovanni Badiali into competition. Now, I believe we were expecting today as well Hayden Prodger. Sadly, that doesn't appear to be the case this time around. Prodger set to fall further down the order then, out of the top 5 by the end of today's round. It also fails to factor for a few other drivers on this list. I mean, namely, we're also seeing Timodo Tosto not on that list. To the right-hand side, we're not seeing any of the new drivers either. So we're not seeing Mals, we're not seeing Bourdreau, who made his debut last round. We're not seeing Simard in that comparison. So it does leave quite a few gaps open here for analysis. Moreover, I think another huge factor not being considered, Byron Forrest in the 824. We have seen him to be top 10 material. In a grid of 14 cars right now, we could definitely expect to see him in that top 50%. We'll have to gauge that in due course. We're still on board with Christian Lebay. We're going to get on board proper with the 119 to become the first car to take onto the track here. Will be our baseline flying lap coming up out of turn 19. About to start their flying lap. Let's get on board with the 119 and give you a comprehensive breakdown of all 20 corners of FIA Grade 1 that comprise the Circuit of the Americas. So on board with the man who's 2 times on the trot for race wins this season. On board with Christian Lebay making his way down towards turn 1, named Big Red in honour of Texas billionaire Red McCombs, who was a great part in the founding of the Circuit of the Americas. On through turn 1 then, on the run down towards turn 2, sweeping round to the right-hand side here, very easy to understeer on hot tyres. In through turn 3 and turn 4, this is where things really start to tighten up, and this is where a lot of drivers have been faulted before by those track limits, because that track, despite being easily about 2 to 3 cars width through that corner, the available space is barely half a car's width there. You're ducking onto the curbs quite routinely. So out through turns 7, 8, and 9, now rocking down towards turn 10. Very easy to cut on the inside here, so you can see following on that tarmacked in line just to the middle of the road for Lebay as he now hugs the middle of the curbs, trying to use all available space there to the right hand side on the run into turn 11. Now onto that 3/4 mile back straight. You can see really letting loose now on all 5 litres, all 8 cylinders. No strings attached here, no turbos for the Jaguar. You can see really committing to that right-hand side. This is dangerously close, and obviously Lebay's done his homework when it comes to this track. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be in the conversation for a consideration of pole position. He is no slouch when it comes to understanding these tracks very quickly. Well, we don't seem to have a lot of information over Lebay's previous performances at the Circuit of the Americas. He was at least in somewhat of a state of contention back in Season 2 of the Sunday League in NLRL, but we've not seen what he could do in a Jaguar, so just as the same, we're seeing treading new ground. Out through turns 15 and 16 then, a section eerily reminiscent of, I believe it's turns 8 and 9 at the Bahrain International Circuit, the Bahrain Grand Prix venue. Now out through turns 17 and 18 and towards turn 19. Now we've seen track limits be abused quite liberally in the world of NASCAR through this section, where they use all of that concrete runoff to your right hand side. Now in through turn 20, on with Christian Lebay making his way down towards the checkered line to become the baseline time for qualifying today. Just under 5 minutes covered of quali today. Across the line goes the 119. Will it be a valid time? No, not this time around for Lebay. So our benchmark time goes to Byron Forrest to 2:08.832. Clinton Bourne 6/10ths off after his first flying lap. Then Richard Cecil to the line, 3rd fastest. Then from behind him, Vincent Simard up to 3rd fastest. Then from behind him, I think we can see there to the line, is Giovanni Badiali up to fastest there, 1.1 seconds ahead of Byron Forrest. But that's quite a dark horse time from the 119. Christian Lebay not setting a valid lap right off the bat. This is usually his bread and butter, is getting out on track and getting those times in early doors, letting everyone know, here's the benchmark, come and get it. Across the line a moment ago went the 44 to start another flying lap. That's Daniel Poulin down through turn 1. 9:62 across the line. So onto the timing charts goes Carl David Bourdreau, 6th fastest, 2.8 seconds off of current pole position. The 36 across the line, that's Alex Albert. And right now sits in behind Bourdreau, just into that 4th row there. Waiting to see where the nearest times will be coming from. The number 96 is on our radar now, just on the exit of turn 16. A little bit of a struggle here in the opening laps for Casey Miles. He makes his way currently down through turns 17 and 18. And so we've heard as well from Miles, this isn't the most confident he's been feeling coming into a race, but considering these are the baby steps of a very ambitious leap into the world of Jaguar Cup racing, as niche of a market as that may be, I think this is all just teething issues at the moment for Miles. We've seen him before with Team Raceline. We know that he's capable of longer form endurance racing. This should be, once he gets to grips with this machine, just a little bit of a case of survival, sort of learn the footing, learn the lay of the land. And then by the time we go to Laguna Seca in Monterey County, California next round, should be well within his element. Out through turn 20 comes Christian Lepay, potentially onto the timing charts now. So we'll see 207.725 to beat, and across the line comes the 119. Will it be up to pole position this time around? No, is again 2 times on the trot. Is this sandbagging, or are we seeing genuine concerns for track limits for Christian Lepay? Could this be a knock-on effect for what could happen further down the line in the hour of racing set to follow? Of course, we are expecting, more so than any other event on this calendar, for a flurry of penalties to come flying in today. Trouble for what appears to be the 58, and that's a spin for Timo de Tosto. That's currently on what appears to be his first valid flying lap, so not the greatest of starts here for de Tosto. Across the line a moment ago, Daniel Poulin up to 7th ahead of Alex Albert. 3.4 seconds currently off of the fastest time, still set by Giovanni Badiali. The 962 across the line. Carl David Bourdreau maintains his stead of the 3rd row, still scratching to within a time here on the top 5. Across the line from behind him goes the 36 and takes 6th place off of him. So Alex Albert now closest to within a chance of a top 5 start. The 58 across the line to start a lap anew, and that's for Timo de Tosto. We saw that spin down through turns 15 and 16. Now begins his run back down towards Big Red at turn 1. Nearest to the line at the moment, Stephen Black on his way down through the very same section that claims that first lap off of Timo de Tosto. Watching here with Black on his way down through turn 17 and 18, down towards turn 19. Just to comment as well, as it stands heading towards the halfway mark of the session so far, Badiali at the front of the pack, Forrest 2nd, Bourne 3rd, Simard 4th, Richard Cecil in 5th place. So down towards the line comes Stephen Black. We'll see where he puts himself on that chart across the line. And again, much to the same as we've seen the story for Christian Lepay so far, an invalid time for the 707 of Black. So down towards the line comes Christian Lepay, not too far off of the stead of the not the 777, this 707. And there you can see, 3rd time's the charm for Lepay. 470 thousandths of a second up the road from Badiali. What is the rebuttal then from the 998? Currently, you can see is out on track on his way down through turns 19 and 20. Across the line from behind Lepay as well went the number 6 of Clinton Bourne, maintains his stead of the 2nd row. Looks to be, at this time, if it is to stay the same way, he'll be starting on the 2nd row alongside Byron Forrest in a very, very solid position on his way down towards turn 1. We saw an improvement there by half of the current gap for Giovanni Badiali, but close but no cigar in his efforts to get up to pole position. The time to beat so far, a 207.255. The 44 across the line a moment ago, and Daniel Poulin remains in 9th place. Heading to the line, actually was heading to the line, but into the pit lane goes Carl David Bourdreau. So let's get on board with the nearest driver to the line. It's Timo de Tosto on his way down through turn 19. Down through turn 20, you can see a little bit of understeer creeping in on these Jaguars, on especially that final corner here. That could make for a bit of a heart in the throat moment on some of these final laps of not only qualifying today, but also in the race set to follow, because a good exit out of there can actually lead to a very sizable number of moves in towards turn 1 here. It is the staging point for some serious side-by-side action in today's race. Right now, the story of 2 on that front row. Giovanni Badiali returns after hiatus and 2nd round of the championship at the Watkins Glen International Circuit, and is now back into competition alongside Christian Lepay. The two divided right now by just a little under a quarter of a second. Nearest to the line, the 707. Will it be revenge here for Stephen Black? He missed out on the opportunity to put times on the chart, and it's the same story again. This has got to be genuine frustration now for the 707. Across the line goes LeBay. Is it to an improvement over a 207.255? No, not this time around. The 824 next to the line. Here comes Byron Forrest. And he was looking to be a very capable challenger in his own right here as we head into the second half of qualifying. That is a sizable improvement off of Byron Forrest. Now puts himself within half a second, actually a little over half a second to be precise. That's about 555 thousandths of a second between himself and Giovanni Battiali in second place. So it's looking very hopeful here for Forrest, especially when one considers his current championship outlook after the second round of the championship. He finds himself right now joint for points with Giovanni Battiali. So for these two, that is a lot of tension going on, as that does represent right now, that top three represents exactly their positions in the championship. Also looking to be quite a hopeful sign in today's qualifying endeavours, could be furthermore a very hopeful sign in the race set to follow. 8 minutes left to go at the moment. Currently still in the pit lane, though, is the discussion of the number 6 of Clinton Bourne. Now, looking at where he is in the championship, did take a little bit of a downturn after that last round. That dropped result has dropped him down to a joint 9th position with Carl David Bourdreau. But there is plenty of opportunities for the Australian here, and we've seen that he's absolutely no slouch when it comes to qualifying. It's just a case of trying to keep himself out of harm's way. Often trouble finds its way toward the number 6, as we saw over the course of the last couple of races here, but he can really roll with the punches. We've seen him to be a really capable fighter in his own respect. So making his way in towards that first sector on another flurry of flying laps to follow. Bourne's out of the pit lane. We'll see him later on today, potentially to an improvement here. Needs 7/10 of a second to get himself within Byron Forrest's point of view, and that was already not off to the greatest of starts. But that is going to be one of the major hurdles these drivers will encounter with so many winding corners here. It has to be absolutely airtight for vehicle setup, otherwise you will find problems like that creep their way in very, very early on in this race. It's again back into that argument that these drivers, while they may be familiar with the Circuit of the Americas, whether they've competed in it from Formula 1, whether they've competed in it in the GT3s of the modern day, or whether they perhaps even competed in it in some prototype cars. I mean, there could be the even super rare overlap that they've competed in stock cars over on something like, say, iRacing, for example. But the bottom line is the Jaguar XK-G3 should not be here. I think that's something really to discuss. GT3 cars are already a little uncomfortable here at the Circuit of the Americas because it was a track never really designed with them in mind. It was purely under the auspice of the airtight rules of Formula 1 in the early 2010s, and those cars were no slouches in their own right. They may not be the juggernauts for cornering capacity that they are, especially towards the end of the 2010s, even into the early 2020s, but they were still absolutely rapid and could more than definitely blow the socks off of these GT3 cars of the same year. So next to the line at the moment, Battiali in the 998. You can see he's drawing that gap into a dangerously close margin now. On that last lap, he's put it to within 179 thousandths of a second to Christian LeBay's leading time now. A 207.255, still the mark to beat here. And that glass ceiling is starting to show a few cracks in it, especially with the progress so far shown by the 998. Could be a very close finish to qualifying today. We're nearly 3/4 of the way in. 5 minutes coming up left to go before the end of qualifying here in round 3 of the championship for the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. We are seeing a few connection troubles, and I believe right now it's for Carl David Bourdreau in the number 962. We did just see there as well more connection troubles for one driver, and I'm not entirely sure who it was that just lipped their way out of reality, but that is seemingly a problem. We are trying to get 15 drivers on the grid here, but seemingly keeps dropping back to only 14. We've also seen in the time we've been speaking that Casey Miles and Stephen Black have finally put times on the charts there, 11th and 12th, right now starting ahead of Carl Martel and Anthony COTA, unless either of them make efforts to get out of the pit lane. We've also seen, I should say, continued frustrations for one such driver continually returning to the pit lane. We keep seeing them drop off of the air jacks, and I think that is for, by the looks of it here, yes, it is Casey Miles that's been having some spotter bother here. We've seen him back onto the jacks in the pit lane. Something clearly not awry with that machine in the last laps just gone. We've yet to see sizable improvement out of Clinton Bourne, but he maintains his stead of the top 5 and moreover looks to be, as far as it stands right now, starting on that second row. So he's in a very comfortable position right now. We'll start right behind Giovanni Badiali, who will start to, I believe, the outside down through turn 1. Not a bad place to be when you consider how treacherous that corner can get, to have a little bit more free roam of that right-hand side down through turn 1. It's not the worst thing. The worst place you want to be, especially with the way that the United States Grand Prix has gone, is up on the racing line, the inside line through to turn 1, because that is a one-way trip to getting your car turned around. To hug around the outside, maybe lose a few temps here and there, ultimately you'll be thanked in the long run for such a gesture. So we've got word there from Casey Miles. He's working on his setup, so tirelessly slaving away there on the 96 to make sure it's in serviceable condition for the start of his first ever Jaguar GT3 revival race here in the Competizione Performance League. We've also seen just recently back into the pit lane, that was the number 120 of Vincent Simard, made his debut last round in Watkins Glen. Not the worst debut in the world, all things considered here for Simard in that 120. Looking back towards the results of the second round of the championship, if we can find him on our little charts here. He's currently 12th in the championship. Finished inside the top 10. Now, it was definitely quite a mixed bag for a lot of drivers. We saw quite a lot of the chaos kicking off over the course of that second round of the championship. I know that Simard as well, because this was much as the same as it will be today for Casey Miles. His first time in these Jaguars, in these conditions, on tracks such as these. It's just not something a lot of drivers seemingly have a lot of experience in, bar the obvious on the front row right now. And, we did see a lot of those teething issues creep in, but now that he's ironed out a lot of the proverbial creases in his jumper, we're seeing that Simard actually, when applying himself here in the 120, is not too bad a driver, especially against a grid of drivers such as the ones we find here in the Competizione Performance League. They're no slouches in their own right. We've seen them compete in other series. I mean, looking at the credentials here for drivers such as Byron Forrest and Christian LeBay, they've been regular customers to the NLRL Sunday League, and when they have competed, such as the case for Forrest, where he's had a bit of an on and off appearance record, he has been a very, very competent driver indeed. Also looking as well, more recent emergences from Poulin de Tosto and Albert in the Console Endurance Series. They've not been too bad either in the Bentleys. There's a lot to be studied here with these drivers. Moreover, Carl Martel was a pretty solid customer in GT4 over on the Solo Multi-Class Endurance Championship. Moreover, we've seen a lot of these drivers, especially in their efforts for GT4, compete over on the High Caliber Community League, of which we're getting into the final round of the GT4 Challenge this coming Saturday from the Red Bull Ring after a week's hiatus. I do thoroughly look forward to that. We've got more fun events lined up with the folks over on the High Caliber Community League later on in the winter months of 2025. I've also got some great things to work on with both them and the folks here at Competizione Performance League heading into 2026. It's going to be a jam-packed start to the next year. Right now, we're into that final minute here. Timo de Tosto still out on track, starting off another flying lap. This will be his last opportunity before the end of qualifying today. We'll catch on with him in a little while's time. Right now is still the discussion going on over who could emerge on pole position, because right now the gaps are just a little too close to decisively call it one way or the other. It could be one last lap dash here out of Badiali to put himself up to pole position to disrupt what has been back-to-back poles so far for Christian LeBay. It's been uncontested territory as we're headed into the ambiguous Jaguar era. Right now, Badiali could represent one of the many cracks in that forming facade, as it were, that this could be another cut and dry LeBay dominant season. Staying here with Giovanni Badiali. We'll cut away from him just a moment's time here as we now come to the end of qualifying. Down to the line of 207.255 to beat, and it's a 206.972. So the gap massively opened up now. The stakes have been raised here by LeBay, going further fastest over his previous fastest time by a factor of up to 0.3 of a second over Badiali's previous gap. Now that's nearly Nearly half a second that he's got to deal with here out of turn 20. Down towards the line comes Giovanni Badiali. Will it be enough for the 998 across the line? And it was an improvement, but not enough for position, and all but resets the progress he otherwise was trying to nullify in the first place. Across the line as well, or coming to the end of their qualifying session, as I should say, was one of the other drivers out on track. But there you have the grid so far. We'll get on to the discussion of the grid as it lines up in a moment's time. Sadly, with no news today, not an awful lot to discuss in terms of the current global outlook in the world of motorsports, or for that matter, the automotive industry. I know that we were able to talk in the last couple of broadcasts about some of the more bizarre findings in the world of the most recently ran, I should say, 2025, trying to get my words out, the Japan Mobility Show, which showed off a variety of new and emerging technologies from a variety of mainstay Japanese manufacturers. We saw quite a few ambitious concepts. Lexus with a 6-wheeled luxury electric van, Daihatsu bringing back the Copen and the Midget mini truck, as well as Subaru hinting at what the potential future of the Impreza could look like. And that's all a lot of interesting stuff that we've spoken on in the last couple of weeks. But now on to the interesting stuff of the here and now. And that's for the grid here of round 3 of the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series by Competizione Performance League. Christian Lebay lines up on another decisive pole position, but by a much closer margin than I think he was expecting over what has been set in stone of the last 2 weeks of racing. Giovanni Badiali lines up in second place here upon return after a hiatus at round 2 of the championship. Byron Forrest finds himself on the second row, and alongside him is Clinton Bourne. Two very hopeful signs of today's race. The 824 and the number 6. Do keep a close eye on those two heading down into turns 1, 2, and 3 in that opening sector. Could be quite a lot of action to be had between the 824 and the number 6. Rounding out the top 5, then the man who started our broadcast today. We were on board with at the very early quarters of today's running broadcast. The number 5 of Richard Cecil starts 5th and ahead of Timodo Tosta to round out that 3rd row. On the 4th row, Alex Albert and Vincent Simard in 7th and 8th position, rounding out the top 10 on the 5th row. Then 9th place for Daniel Poulin and 10th place for Carl David Bourdreau, two of the newer signings having joined over the course of round 2 of the championship. Stephen Black finds himself in 11th, and starting at the back of that 6th row then on debut, the number 96 of Casey Miles. And then we see behind as well, rounding out what is 7 rows of cars. Now, I was told it was going to be a bit of a quieter race today. I think we are maybe playing things a little bit close to the chest and saying that's still 14 cars. There's nothing to scoff at. 13th for Carl Martel and 14th for Anthony Cotti, both of them neglecting to do times in qualifying. Of course, for those of you curious over where one such driver in particular is, that being the number 18 of Julio Bahena, race control decisions over the course of round 2 sees that the car number 18, that being Bahena, is to receive a race ban for round 3 after multiple major incidents at the Watkins Glen International Circuit. Now, there was quite a lot of bedlam to be discussed out of round 2 of the championship. Sadly, that does mean that because he has reached that threshold now for penalty points, Bahena misses out on round 3 of the championship. We do hope to see him again soon, though, when we head over to Monterey County, California at the Mazda WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca for round 4 of the championship here in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. So not too far out from the start of our formation lap here, and things are going to be looking very, very hopeful for that top 5. I mean, we are looking at a potential side-by-side dash here between Badiali and Lebay. We've seen how strong his starts have been. I would even go as far to say that you are looking on the front row right now at 2 of the strongest contenders off of the line when the lights go green in Competizione Performance League sphere of influence right now. Lebay, he's got the reaction timing nailed, and so too does Badiali. Watching these two be on the same row is always a treat for the eyes. As you see, it is a proper drag race down towards turn 1 every time. It's very, very heavy on theatrics between these two. So heading down into this area of the track, turn 1, and you'll see when we get on board here with the dash cam view of the leading car, the number 119 of Lebay, who'll be taking us away in a moment's time for the start of the formation lap, just how tight it becomes, because it's a run uphill into what is almost a blind crest depending on the point of view. On board then with Christian Lebay as we start the run of the formation lap. You can see that run up towards turn 1, it does open up massively just after the exit of the pit lane. It gives drivers a relatively open-ended strategy, but you can see actually past the apex, it tightens up massively. This is what leads to a lot of those crunch time incidents that we see more prominently in Formula 1 at the United States Grand Prix, and we've seen over the course of the last couple of years. It's just because you do feel like heading into that corner, and it's a very easy thing to get lulled into, especially when you're in the heat of a side-by-side fight right off of the bat, is to think that there's a lot more space on the exit of that corner. In fact, it is one of the tightest corners, if not the tightest, in the entirety of the Circuit of the Americas. And that's only compounded by this opening sector here, of course, as we've mentioned, and hate to sound like a broken record, but draws quite heavy inspiration from Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel at Silverstone, as well as the S's at the Suzuka International Racing Course. And as such, it is very claustrophobic. Despite being wider than either of those two, does find itself with very, very light amenities for available space to use for these drivers. It does leave them a little bit empty-handed when it comes to the capacity to go side by side. This is where it does open up, because a good exit here from turn 10 is the staging point for a move down at turn 11. This is a much more forgiving version of that opening corner into the wall there. That's Alex Albert off of the bat, does a half spin into the barrier. Well, that can't look particularly good for him here. Let's get on board with Alex Albert. We'll see the scope of the damage on that 36 as he makes his way around turn 11, and it looks pretty light there for the 36. I think he's come off that quite lucky indeed. What a fantastic camera angle we're seeing here. The driver's already starting to heat the tyres up. Not that they'll need much assistance. 24 degrees on track, 18 ambient at the last recorded interval. Does leave things nice and toasty for our run here in Austin, Texas. Not too hot and not too cold. We find ourselves in the proverbial Goldilocks zone for those Pirelli P0s. That's not going to stop drivers from trying to generate enough heat here. Doing it too early can lead the car a little bit high and dry for available grip. Doing it too late means that they run the risk of overheating. So it's all a bit of a fine balancing act, and especially with how uncooperative compared to their Formula 1 counterparts that this iteration of the Pirelli P0 can be for our GT3s. This is a very, very fine strategy game. The silent dance, as it were, that can lead to a properly solid or properly horrid start to one's race. So not long now from the start of round 3 of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. We can see those starting from the pit lane, the number 99 of Karl Martel starts from the back. We'll have to try and chase word from him as to whether or not we'll be seeing him in today's race. Of course, he has been playing a support role over the course of this championship, being our extra set of eyes in the sky. Right now he resides from the pit lane, so we hope to see him on track soon, but if not, then you know the reason why. Down towards turn 20 we go, then still on board with Christian Lebay leading an entourage of cars here, 13 in all on track, one from the pit lane potentially to join them later on. As heading down out of turn 20, it's a short run down to that start-finish straight here for round 3 of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, here out of the Lone Star State at the home of the Circuit of the Americas, home of the United States Grand Prix. 13 cars in all, 6 one side, 7 on the other, one from the pit lane. Without further ado then, an hour against the clock, and we are green and racing here in the Lone Star State. A brilliant start then from that front row as predicted. An even better start as it turns out for the 998 of Giovanni Baddiali, but he'd be outside on his way through turn 1. It's going to tighten up massively. Already contact in the background. That's between, looking at it there, the cars on the second row. That would have been Clinton Bourne and Byron Forrest. So sadly, the ones to watch there have absolutely blundered out through turn 1. You can see what's gone on there. I think it's collision, yes, between Forrest and then with Bourne. Then it backs him up into Seesaw, and it creates a huge cascade effect that amongst all of that has been able to be exploited up in the foreground by Baddiali, who now leads on his way down towards turn 10. Lebay down to second. Clinton Bourne maintains his stead of third place. Richard Cecil in fourth. Alex Albert in fifth. But you can see a noticeable gap has already built up. Karl Martel still in the pit lane. But we see here the 96 of Casey Mal's in trouble. A temporary yellow flag on our exit of turn 9. He's back into good form here. No apparent damages so far for the 96. But what a hectic start we've already seen here at the Circuit of the Americas. Getting a look further down the line, we do have an imminent battle coming up here. Looks to be Vincent Simard versus Carl David Bourdreau and Alex Albert. So let's see if we can get on board with the car currently defending the stead of all of this. And that was a man caught up at the very start of today's session, down on a matter of fact, the formation lap. Alex Albert currently defending. You can see in the background there was contact between Bourdreau and Simard. That's inviting in Daniel Poulon in the background there, the number 44, who made his debut in the opening round of this season to come and have a go for what is currently the fight of 5th place. Further up the road right now, Labbé still hangs behind the 998 of Giovanni Battioli. A brilliant start by the Italian talent. Finds himself now at the forefront of this race. After one lap in the runnings here, a great start leveraged by the 998, leads on his way down towards turns 19 and 20. There could be imminent fight back in a moment's time. We are watching in the background here as we do see, from Alex Albert's point of view, a clear line of sight into a battle going further on down the field. Let's see if we can get on board here as we see a big half spin there for the 962, I should say, of Carl David Bourdreau. He was hit up the backside once already by that 120 of Vincent Simard. You can see Daniel Poulon try to follow through, and you saw jumping there by Simard as his car catches the sausage curbs. Let's get a look at that on the instant replay. That was vicious for the 120. You do see, now from the point of view of Daniel Poulon, he finds himself right up to the back end of Carl David Bourdreau, currently in their fight going on right now for 6th place on the field. That was a brilliant start, though, we've seen so far. We see that Casey Miles is up to 13th place at the... Actually, I should say down to 13th place at the moment. It is now 14 cars officially left in this race, one still from the pit lane. And so far, we've yet to see any movement out of Martel. So that is equivocally the back of the field so far. But it's all baby steps, as we've mentioned before. Everyone's got to have their bad result before they start getting their good ones. Clinton Bourne finds himself on stead to have a good result today. Already onto the podium positions. He's already leveraged his way into 3rd place, up one position, much to the chagrin of Byron Forrest, who finds himself cast away further down the order. You can see the gap already forming between that leading pair, distancing themselves very quickly from the rest of the field. Clinton Bourne finds himself by his lonesome here, separated 2.7 seconds from the car behind, 3.7 seconds from the cars up in front. Byron Forrest finds himself now slap bang in the middle of a fight for 7th place. Daniel Poulon in front of him, Vincent Simard behind, further up the road, Bourdreau and Albert. Trouble for the 96 again. Casey Miles brings out the yellow flags for turn 11. It's not looking to be his day here in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, but as I mentioned, these are all just teething problems for the 96 with the hopes we'll see him once again in Laguna Seca. Everyone's got to learn at some point. You can see here one driver really trying to claw his way back into the fight. He was shunted out through turn 1. It was a real bit of drama there between himself and Clinton Bourne. Side-by-side contact, then he was hit from behind by the number 5, spun around at turn 1. It was a massive crunch between those two. Now back on board with the leading pairs. We see these two aren't distancing themselves from one another by a long shot here. Still with that fastest lap, in fact just obtained that over the course of the last lap just gone on to lap 2. A 207.7 dead for Christian Labbé. A bit of an awkward run through turn 1 for Giovanni Battioli. Let's stay on board with these two just for a moment's time here over the course of this newly found fight for the race lead. Labbé thought that he had it potentially in the bag here, but a brilliant start by Giovanni Battioli. I think that really does go to show their capacity right off of the line here. It was really almost an old Western gunslinger draw between these two every time they start from the front row. Today's been no exception, and where better to have a good old Western draw right here in the Lone Star State. See though that this winding opening sector is even playing quite heavy tolls on even the more experienced drivers in these old-fashioned machines like Christian Labbé. He knows how a car feels when it gets relatively upset, even in modern machines, and he feels it even more so in the older cars. He's able to contend with modern-day machinery in the likes of an Aston Martin V12 Vantage here. But this Jaguar, it is really a completely different kettle of fish. This is a very raw, very viscerally designed vehicle. A little bit more slapdash than what we've seen from the more razor-precise offerings even of its day. This is when engineering firms had a much more involved role in the world of GT3 racing as a part to being contractors. This is when they were mostly left the majority of creative control, with more primary and vital parts left to their devices by the manufacturer themselves. Emil Frey really did have to piece this thing together with sticks and stones, with Jaguar providing the body and the engine. I think another very good suggestion of a vehicle such as this back in its time would have been the Writer Engineering. I think it's called the REX, basically a Gallardo Super Trofeo turned GT3 car. And across the line, they maintain very good stead from one another at this time. 0.4 seconds. You can see he's not gaining a huge chunk of ground in through turn 1. Two differing lines there. It's a concertina effect. Nothing gained, nothing lost in the grand scheme of things between those two. We cut away now to go further down the line to see what the scope of things are in the continued fight up in the top 5. You can see further down the line, it is very close stuff right now between Timo Tosto and Vincent Simard. The two get side by side down through turn 1, very nearly contact. Let's stay on board here. This is currently the fight of 9th place from the point of view of the number 58 Timo Tosto, competing at home here in the US. This is the real frightening aspect of that opening sector. You can see the drivers religiously avoiding too many cuts, and we did say that there's a very high chance, more so than any other round in the championship, to expect to see a real swarm of penalties rule in for those track limits infractions. You can see the drivers in their efforts to try and snake around those track limits are in turn doing a lot more damage by taking those obtuse lines. They're wearing the tyres out, they're leaving the car, like as we saw there for Timo Tosto, a tad unstable. Looking further up the road from them, we can see it is getting much, much closer in the topic of one such fight in particular, Carl David Bourdreau versus Byron Forrest. They make their way down towards turn 12, looking for the inside here. Bourdreau's going for it. Forrest has left him the space. The 962 up in a 6th place there. Byron Forrest, though, isn't going to be leaving this one alone without a good fight. Let's see if we can get on board with Byron Forrest before the end of this fight today. We head into that very, very tight final sector. Now following on board with Byron Forrest in what is the fight of 6th place. In through turns 17 and 18, you can see following in that aero wash. You just knew that was going to happen. You just knew that was going to happen with how close they were getting over the course of that fight. Let's get a look at that on the replays just really quick. We were trying to discuss the aero wash is not doing him many favours. I don't think he was expecting that little dab on the brakes. Moreover, that in that second part, that was him lifting off of the throttle to try and give the car more rotation. Ultimately, both sides failed to factor the space. Forrest still felt he was able to commit himself to the line. I don't think he was expecting the 962 to have lifted in such a manner. Otherwise, I don't think he would have committed himself to that move at all. Such is the case for this incident in particular. That's Race Control's job to dissect that down to its finest. And from where we stand, at least here in the commentary box, that looked a little bit more like a racing incident than anything. There's no real clear intent from either side as to what's going on in that situation. I think it's two drivers pushing themselves through a corner, and one ended up slipping and lifted off the throttle, backed into the other. That was, clear cut. It's a racing incident. Looking further around the field, it is still just a two-man race here up front, and they've been, by that magic number, 0.4 of a second divided by one another over the course down towards turn 12. These two find themselves so perfectly matched here. For Battiali, this is salvaging hopes to get himself back up into the championship fight. He knows with the drop point system, it's not going to be doing him many favours, as it's going to be a slow procession to get up and ahead of the man on screen at the moment. The 119 who started from pole position, Christian Lebay, we're now back on board with in that continued fight of the race lead. In the meantime, we did have yellow flags out for Sector 1. The 96 of Casey Mal's in trouble. He's back going ever since. So we stay on board with these two here on their way out through the final sector, down towards turns 19 and 20. You can see Lebay trying to get a little bit more ambitious with track limits there, using all of the available space. That gives him just a slight bit more momentum. That can factor potentially hundredths, if not tenths of a second overall. Seeing that last lap, 207.372, but he no longer holds on to what is the fastest lap of this race. You can see for that reason, because in that last lap, that was considered invalid. This is a real panic spot for Lebay. You've got to consider now, he's sat in the aero wash of Battiali. He's going to be chewing through these tyres, which is already not a strong suit, this Jaguar. You can see, even in his experience, this is a difficult car, one that he's had to tirelessly piece together to be in competitive form. Badiali's got the easier job here with so much clean air on the nose of that Jaguar, able to cool everything down, able to keep those tyres nice and peachy. He's got the easy job, whereas Lebay, you can see with that lack of aero, with that excessive heat, that car is getting dragged down. And this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back here, because he's now out by nearly a whole second to Badiali over the course of that first sector alone. That's only going to continue to get worse as we both get down towards the third sector in a moment's time, but also as we get back into the first sector on lap 6. So this is going to be a bit of a tough call for Lebay, especially when you consider strategy. We're still probably about, looking at it here, about 18 minutes out from when we expect the bulk of the pit stops to occur. Could it be a case, like as we saw, that actually ended up delivering a great deal of success for Lebay over in Valencia in the first of 2 races, the double stint rounds at round 2 of the NLRL Sunday League Season 4? Could it be a case where he jumps into the pits early, sacrifices that pair of tyres, and potentially a little bit of a gap here to Badiali, but in the long run, benefit from just fresher tyres overall? He was able to go a little bit of the extra mile. You can see a big jump there past the exit of turn 17, I believe that were. Turn 16, I should say. And that's the same thing we saw earlier that caught, if we look back on the replays here, I believe that was, if that is still the, no, okay, so that's for the incident from before. It was for Simard and Poulin and Vaudreuil in their 3-way fight. We saw that Simard got all the way up over those curbs, actually on the exit of turn 20 here, and that's what led to a huge hop, skip and jump from the nose of that car. Ultimately lost him the position in that fight. We cut on board here, Byron Forrest versus Alex Albert. This is all for 5th place, and you can see running high there round turn 19. That was quick and clinical for Forrest at this time. He's not going to be making the same mistakes down in sector 3. He's made that one look very, very easy indeed. So hats off to him there. On board with Daniel Poulin in his fight against Timo de Tosto. This is for 8th place overall, though. It's for that fight further up the road for 7th, currently held by Vincent Simard in the number 120 in that dark blue Emil Frey Racing Jag. Down towards turn 1, we see a little bit of a wide exit there for Alex Albert. We're on board with Daniel Poulin. You can see really hooks it in on the inside at turn 1. And I think the car swung a little bit for him there, as he now has Anthony COTA for company at the back of that top 10. He's been a very quiet presence in today's grid because he started from the back, didn't compete in qualifying today. And that 9.19, we did see him last season in the waning rounds of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series in the end of season 1. We did see COTA's first handful of appearances. Now we get to see him here in Jaguar. Staying on board here with Daniel Poulin. Currently all in contention for that fight of 8th place. He's up the inside on Timo de Tosto. Now, could he be leaving himself open for a switchback? That is absolutely the case. But here's the real dilemma they find themselves in now. With the gap between turns 11 and 12, a factor of about 3/4 of a mile, a switchback is possible, but it is properly choreographed here. I mean, this is going to take a lot of foresight to execute properly in the case of Timo de Tosto. You can see now swings high around the outside for turn 12, knowing Poulin's covering the inside. He's going to give himself the slightly better of 2 exits for the run down into what could be a lunge here at turn 13. That is very dicey on the inside for the 58. Still watching with the 44's point of view, now fending off for a fight of 8th place. Daniel Poulin's really got it up against him. As you can see, up in front is a scrap for 6th between Vincent Simard and Alex Albert. Right behind him, he's got 2 very eager drivers, the 58 and the 919 of de Tosto and COTA, looking to hammer down here on a continued fight up towards the top 5. Bear in mind, just about a quarter of an hour into racing today, so very, very hectic stuff here in the Circuit of the Americas. Looking at where we are after 15 minutes, it's been a big mix-up from the start of the race here. You see Richard Cecil and Clinton Bourne up a few positions from the start, but right now Giovanni Badiali, the biggest beneficiary of all, going up to the race lead after the first corner. It was a decisive overtake for him there, leveraging some of the action going on behind as a little bit of a smoke screen to give him that position. Moreover, it was just good placement and very solid reactions by the Italian, put him up into the lead of the race, currently with the fastest lap as well. Lebay not too far behind at all in this argument. We can see Anthony COTA just got up past Timo de Tosto from behind here, still watching with Daniel Poulin's fight for 8th. Further down the line from Christian Lebay then at the front of the race. He's behind Giovanni Badiali, but he's ahead of Clinton Bourne in 3rd, Richard Cecil in 4th, Byron Forrest down to 5th after a collision with Clinton Bourne at the start of the race today. Vincent Simard in 6th, Alex Albert in 7th. We saw that change in position go on over the course of that first corner just a moment ago. We do see there, finally, the first of our drive-through penalties. It's for Anthony COTA in the number 919, that bright blue Jaguar right behind here, the 44 of Daniel Poulon. Poulon in 8th. COTA was 9th. Now it's going to be down a few positions when he takes that drive-through penalty. Timo Tosto then set to come back up into 9th place, mitigating the losses there suffered over the course of turn 1 here on lap 7. Carl David Bourgeot could be seeing potentially some benefit today as well. He's a ways back, just outside of the top 10 as a matter of fact, and ahead of Stephen Black and Casey Miles at the back of that top 13. Whether or not he's going to be close enough to see any kind of benefit out of that drive-through penalty is another question entirely. We have seen a bit of an upgrade, though, for Daniel Poulon. We were covering originally his fight for 8th place. This was against COTA and Di Tosto. Now we see, after a bit of a shambles lap here for Alex Albert, we saw the early kindlings there of some significant tyre drop-off for the 36 over the course of lap 6. And now we see it build in to what could be a fight of 7th place here. That bright magenta and green in front, the 36 of Alex Albert. We're watching here with the British Racing green and gold 44 of Daniel Junior Poulon. You do see as well, that is a temporary yellow flag down at turns 16 and 17. The 962, Carl David Bourgeot in trouble down in sector 3. Anthony COTA's into the pit lane to serve that drive-through penalty. Back in the green flags as we barrel down towards turn 1. Now, this is an area we've already seen both of these drivers have troubles in. You can see just playing things a little bit safe. He is hooking the nose in. He's scrubbing a lot of momentum out of turn 1. But this seems to be a pretty clear and narrow path for Daniel Junior Poulon. He is definitely doing a lot to keep himself out of the line of fire. You can see you carry a little too much momentum. This is a knock-on effect because that was huge fishtailing for the 36. And once he hits the grass, it is a miracle that he did not see the the broad side of that Aramco barrier. That Armco barrier, I should say. So that puts Daniel Junior Poulon up to 7th place. Not that he's had to do a lot of work into this lap to do so. He's just put himself in the right place at the right time, but it has been very solid consistency to put the 44 where he is overall. Nearly 20 minutes into round 3 of the championship. He's done a very good job here to keep himself out of the line of fire. As mentioned before, we see further down the line, looks to be a fight going on right now between, and this was going on behind Casey Miles's point of view. Actually, as a matter of fact, seems to be more so going on here between two cars trying to get around Casey Miles more so than trying to overtake him. Now we can see approaching at a rate of knots here. Big swerve across to the left for the 96. Now he was caught in a pretty bad spot. I will give him the credit where credit's due. It is not easy mid-corner to shift out of the way of a car doing probably about 2 to 3 tenths faster in that area than you are. It's a scary area. We see incidents like that in the Lone Star Le Mans between the prototypes and the GT3s. It's an awkward area of the track. 2 big square corners. It's why the NASCARs just take a parabolic line. Currently our leading two then separated by about 6 tenths of a second. Now we have seen a little bit of the repair to the damage from earlier on for Christian Lebay. He was very nearly washed out by over a second to Giovanni Battiali for complications here in this opening sector. We can see that he is quickly adapting to the situation at hand, and that's really been one of his strongest attributes over the course of his sim racing career, at least from what we've been able to observe firsthand here on TRTN, is his adaptability. Especially given unorthodox choice of machines, this is already his bread and butter, so it's no surprise to anyone that he's been able to take such decisive command of this series up until today. We've seen adaptability as one of his strongest things, and really it is a universally acceptable trait here in sim racing. I think it is one of the core tenets for success in sim racing, no matter the category, whether it's GT3s, GT4s, GT2s, TCXs, Cup cars, or the likes here of a single make GT3 series. I think it is really a case where having that adaptability, being able to change your methods on the fly, is the making of proper solid talent. I think drivers' first major hurdle is tackling A, consistency, and then B, rigidity. You need to be able to adapt on the fly, especially here on ACC, because the great majority of these races you either find unorthodox choices like this, where these drivers are forced into a very tight funnel for choice. You've got a single choice of car, a car that not a lot of people have sort of backline support for, in terms of setups, in terms of research, in terms of really general understanding. And then you throw them on a track like the Circuit of the Americas, which is not already a very popular track here on ACC, even in the mainline GT3 cars. You can see these two have been able to adapt the quickest, and that is what gives them this overhand advantage here. It's hand over fist faster than the rest of the field so far, just with these two alone. Right now, they're 15 seconds up the road from Clinton Bourne in third place. So these two are just a completely different world of their own. I mean, really, to go hyperbole here, I mean, this is almost Hamilton and Verstappen-esque. These are two drivers completely lasered on one another here. The rest of the world is flying by as a vivid show of colours. And it's just these two completely tunneled in. Looking further around the field then to see where fighting could be going on next, we do look towards the back of that top 10 as we see a little bit of action here. Carl David Bourdreau leading that charge. A little bit of complications in the background for Stephen Black and Anthony Cote. Cote as well finding himself now out of the top 10 after that drive-through penalty. We do see, just hang on a moment, there is appearing to be trouble, at least for one driver. The number 5 here, Richard Cecil, had a spot of bother, I believe, in through that opening sector. He's now dropped behind Vincent Simard, who's up to the top 5. I want to point this out. It has been a very quiet and very clinical procession up to the top 5 so far for Vincent Simard. I mean, hats off to him there. Looking at his results, he had 8th place back in Watkins Glen. I think, realistically, if he had joined us here in Indianapolis, I would not have put it past him to be within that top 5 argument right now. The number 120 has a drive-through for those for those track limits, and that is for Vincent Simard. So you can see what has definitely given him a lot of the edge here has been he's been very close to that bleeding edge for what is acceptable for these stewards. I'd say it's among several other factors, but he's definitely been willing to dare a lot harder than his contemporaries, and ultimately, such as the story for Icarus, he has flown too close to the sun here, and his wings have melted away. So for Richard Cecil, this is a negligible loss for him. He's still going to find himself in that top 5. That's really all that matters at this stage. Before strategy comes in to play its heavy hand, it's not too big of a worry for him at this time. I think he's in a comfortable position from where he's standing. He's comfortable at where he's at in the championship right now. Didn't show up for the first round. That has put him back away, as it's now contributed towards a drop round, which he'll now see every other round he competes in contribute to the championship. So it's going to really play quite a heavy hand on the importance of consistency from here on out, especially because he set the baseline at 4th place in Watkins Glen. So 2 more laps remaining for Vincent Simard to serve his his drive-through penalty. Otherwise, it will be considerable trouble for him further down the line. Just looking from behind as well, we did see a very close battle going on here. Daniel Poulin versus Timo de Tosto. Now, these have been 2 names that have been quite on the up and coming here on TRTN, especially in the case where we've been able to follow de Tosto for a little while longer here than Daniel Poulin. But these two do find themselves, especially today, very evenly matched. And it's been a case where back in GT4s, Timo de Tosto was a very solid customer in his own right. He has quite the solid debut season in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series back in Season 1 here on the Competizione Performance League. And now we get to see almost the same story play out in parallel here for Daniel Junior Poulin. I mean, we saw a very early sign of what he could be capable of back in GT4s. If memory does serve correctly, I believe we did see him in the very, very final rung of rounds back in Season 1, but this is his first full proper season. This has been the first full proper demonstration of his capabilities here under our lens, at least. That's something we always have to take with a bit of grain of salt, and I think it's something that expands out to a bit of a wider point in general for everything that we do cover. There is a little bit of inherent naivety here on TRTN. I'm not going to be able to see absolutely everything these drivers have done down to the finest. If I've covered them for a long time, I will know a lot more about them. I think that just comes to be the case for anyone covering a series. I'm sure that perhaps if you were to commentate for, I don't know, say for example, World Rallycross your entire life, you're not going to be able to name many people competing in the European Truck Racing Championships. It's, you know, it's different circles. I'm sure if they've done more than one series, you will have noticed both. And I think that's the same case here. I imagine we do have to give the drivers a lot more credit than what is inherently given on stream. They have probably done a lot more than what meets the eye. But we try to analyze a lot of our drivers under what we see here on TRTN. We see, though, Daniel Poulin into the pit lane in that number 44. He's had a pretty solid run of things here. Sadly, came to be the case that he's not keeping pace with the 58. This time, oh my words, that is trouble for the 96. I believe that could have been even contact for Casey Miles. He was turned around quite a way there by what appeared to be I saw the orange number 5 there, so whether or not Richard Cecil was directly involved. And you can see that the gap between himself and Timo de Tosto has dropped away rather dramatically here, so I would definitely go as far to make the suggestion that potentially he was involved. He does now find a bit of trouble here with Timo de Tosto, now only 1.4 seconds away, so I definitely would say there had to have been something going on in the meantime. We now see here, I should say, towards the back of that top 10, Stephen Black versus Carl David Bourdrone. You can see two broadly different lines, and this seems to be a real area that the drivers are struggling with down through turn 1. And now, this is not uncommon to see even in GT3s now, but it's a case that these are obviously a little less graceful, a little less refined, as is the case with older types of machine. But we're seeing that because it is a crest, the back end is going light. There's just no connection between front and rear, and you can see where the car is sort of not bottoming out, as it were, but you can see where the back end's going light. There's just nothing connecting it to the ground anymore. The aero's not as efficient as the modern cars. No contacts on... Okay, so it was 0-0, no contacts on myself, out 0 spun. That was from Casey Miles, so that was just in that discussion of what on earth went on for the incident down at turn 1. We do see... And now, just as we cut on board there with Clinton Bourne, also in the pit lanes at this time as well is Christian LeBay, and seemingly as well Anthony Cote in the pit lanes, joining them as well, Byron Forrest. I want to know, and I want to be clued in on this, what on earth just happened there for Clinton Bourne? We did see it was a less than graceful entry to the pits. And we've just seen that it's gone from bad to worse here for Anthony Cote, a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So it's just salt in the wounds here. He's being salt dried like a gourmet steak. I mean, this can't get more bitter for him. You see the first rung of those pit stops coming in, and dare I say it, I'm quite surprised to see. Now, we've been calling this as a prediction for quite a lot of these 60-minute sprint races. Very rarely is it a case where it is followed quite close to being a one-to-one prediction. We see quite a significant brake lock there for Stephen Black in the 707, and then up over the curbs for good measure. But as I was just trying to reflect there, it's very rare we see an exact 50-50. And that is what we've seen, at least to its closest possible point for a lot of drivers here, such as the case for Christian LeBay, for example, Clinton Bourne, Byron Forrest, Timo de Tosto, our current rung of pit lane runners. We saw Daniel Poulin a little bit earlier than that. Oh my goodness. Those are killer. Those are properly killer curbs. Let's get a look at that again. So this is the second time we've covered that turn 20 curb complex. I'm not really sure what you can call it now. I mean, this is a launch pad for these drivers. Look at that. That's all four wheels off the air. That might actually be the most amount of airtime we've seen over the nose of the car, at least. I think overall, that still goes back to... I'm pretty sure it's Alex Albert at Monza, if my memory serves me correctly. So that was quite a ways back. I'm pretty sure that was in the Sunday League, if I'm not mistaken, as well, when he was with Bentley. Halfway into the race then, and we do find ourselves with a broadly new landscape to discuss. Giovanni Badiali has been able to open the taps, and he has had an exceptional opening half to this race here, leading out through turn 1, leveraging a brilliant start over his adversary, the 119 of Christian LeBay, who defended from the inside but ultimately could not stem the tide of the Italian's advance. Currently, he finds himself up the road, yet to have taken his pit stop, so the question therein remains as to how close will he be to the 119 on pit exit. LeBay ultimately opted to go in way earlier, trying to conserve what would be a more graceful exiting drive into that second half. He doesn't find himself currently preoccupied with trying to get around drivers. He's not suffering on those tyres like he was in the opening stint, where he was immediately thrust into attacking round that opening lap. So he's been able to actually nurture the tyres into good health, maintain good core temperature. Moreover, as opposed to where he found himself at the start of this race, he's not dealing with any aero wash. He has been able to actually use the aerodynamics of the car to its fullest extent. You can see the difference as well, and we've discussed that line in through turn one quite a few times here, because we're seeing a lot of drivers get the loose of the car, the back of the car gets loose as they mount the crest, and that's because they're turning as they're mounting the crest. We see, especially with drivers like LeBay, once they start hitting that crest section, they almost treat it like rally, where as you hit a crest and you know the car's rear driven, you actually let off of the steering, let the car guide itself over towards the right hand side of the track. We'll try and catch it here with Badiali if he's not into the pits on this lap. Actually, it could be the case here. Yes, into the pit lane goes Giovanni Badiali, so we'll have to try and catch on board with Christian LeBay's run of things, unless we get a demonstration here. Actually, he's out through turn 12. That's Richard Cecil. Alex Albert's on his way down to turn 12 as we speak. Currently with no one on their way down towards turn 1. Most recently, having got out of turn 1, was Daniel Poulon. He's down through turn 2, 3, and 4 as we speak. Yeah, but we'll try and catch on board with that in a little while's time with the 119, just to demonstrate that point again, because I think that is a very key indicator of success we're seeing from a lot of these drivers, and that's what's separating the top 5 from the remaining 9 or so cars in this race. So currently in the pits is Giovanni Badiali. Now he's waited a little longer for this strategy, getting a little closer to what would have been perhaps a 55-45 in the overall scope of things. LeBay out through turns 17 and 18. So now as he's dropped off of the jacks, he has pulled quite the blinder here, because yes, it is a long run up towards turn 1. We'll have not only all the way to the inside, all of that leverage there. He's also potentially he's on his way to turn 1 as LeBay gets his way around turn 20. Actually, sorry, that's the 707 in front of him that was doing that. As you can see here, it is actually a lot closer for Badiali, but he still finds himself even further up the road from LeBay. So let's just get a look here with LeBay, and you can see there, past the apex, actually lets the car run out to the right. He's not steering anywhere near as hard as he was on corner entry. He tapers it off right at the apex, lets the car guide itself. And you see him do a lot of the same with the V12 Vantage. I've noticed that as well. Is he kind of lets the car guide itself, because it's one of these vehicles that, unlike the GT3s of nowadays, where you can give them a lot of punishment and they can take a lot of punishment, these older GT3s were still quite ramshackle. They were quite visceral. They were quite an involved driving experience. They were cars that were going to fight you back, because they didn't have exactly everything nailed down with them yet. They weren't as razor precise. They weren't as user friendly. You couldn't have a one-size-fit-all driving style for GT3, because every single car was handling with its own set of difficulties, as was the case of just trying to adapt a car like the Jaguar XK or the V12 Vantage or the Lexus RCF or the Bentley Continental to being a mainline GT3 racing car. You see it more so with the lesser used vehicles like the Jag. I think we're seeing a lot more involvement in keeping the car in the clear and narrow, even from drivers otherwise quite icy cool with old school machines like LeBay. We're seeing a lot more of that fight back, especially in this championship. And I'd say it's quite commendable then, given just how hard the cars appear to be to drive, how people can come through and deliver on some really solid results. I mean, we're seeing a potential fight here for what could be the podium coming up very shortly for Clinton Bourne and Byron Forrest, because Richard Cecil, as the only remaining driver inside of that top 5 yet to have pit, that is going to open the gaps up here to give Badiali back the lead. It's going to put LeBay up towards second, and it's going to put Clinton Bourne and Byron Forrest in that argument for the fight of third place. And you can see damage on the nose right now with the number 6 and the 824. Well, since the start of the race here, he has been incredibly fast, albeit that incident down at turn 1. Had it not been for that, I would not have any doubts in my mind he'd still be fighting for what is third place. So I think it's just an inevitability concern for the 824. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when he'd be back onto the fight for the podium, and seemingly Judgment Day is nigh for that number 6. These two, of course, they started on the same row, and they were the sort of spurring point for that large incident down at the Big Red at turn 1 of the start of today's race. And they are about to soon be reunited back under the anvil of racing here at the Circuit of the Americas. 24 minutes left to go, and we've still no word on what is the current strategy call for Richard Cecil or Carl David Bourdreau as the only two remaining drivers yet to have pit. We could potentially get some answers here for the 962 on the exit of turn 19. He is looking for the run into the pit lane. You can see it's very dicey to commit there, and that is where some of the speeding problems have come from. I think we saw that earlier on for the 919 of Anthony COTA. He had some problems with speeding in the pit lane. You can see where that comes from because it is a very short run, one of the shortest, dare I say, for pit lanes here in ACC. Drive through pit lane for Clinton Bourne for track limit. So that is pay dirt for Byron Forrest. Really, all he has to do now, this is foolproof. All he has to do is keep himself away from the thick white lines on either side of the track, and he's golden. There is very little to worry about considering his gap right now to Timo Tosto and Daniel Poulon. There is very little existing threat here at exactly this time of the race for Byron Forrest now. You see, Richard Cecil is into the pit lane. That's going to net the lead back to Giovanni Badiali. You can see only separated by one car on track, that being the 707, the lapped car in 11th place, Stephen Black. We see that Christian LeBay is now up to 2nd place. Clinton Bourne, though, he is going to be absolutely shattered by this news. The drive-through penalty, I mean, it's going to be detrimental for him. Looking at it right now, there is still pretty solid hopes, given that he pits sooner rather than later, that he could still yet emerge, potentially in and around the close vicinity of Timo Tosto and Daniel Poulon. I mean, that's not 100%. It's more guesstimating at this point. So Cecil on the exit here. The question therein remains, is he going to emerge in front of or behind Tosto? Well, with Tosto having crossed the timing line a moment ago, and we can hear the sound of that V8 engine. 58's up past. That's Timo Tosto up into 5th place. What is the current story for Daniel Poulon? He emerges past the start-finish line. We're on board with Richard Cecil up the road from him here in towards turn 1. Right now, 8.5 seconds and dropping rapidly. Clinton Bourne still has that drive-through to serve. And this is just going to be soul-shattering stuff for him. I mean, he has had, albeit a bit of a muddied start to this race, but he has still fought with quite due diligence to stay on the podium. He's had the pace for it, and it's just come apart for him here in the second half of this race. And looking further back towards his results so far, with that dropped result being 13th right now, realistically, this result, even as bad as it gets, is not going to be nullified. This is not going to be one that he can fire and forget and come back next week stronger at Laguna Seca. This is going to be some real heavy ramifications for his endeavours in the championship. Right now, he finds himself 9th place, joint 9th at the back of the top 10. So his efforts right now to try and continue to reinforce that over, for example, the driver that he's been fighting with this for, that being Carl David Bourdreau, it is a slimming chance here, because looking at the gap between the pair of them, with that drive-through penalty to serve, he is going to be dropping quite a ways down the field. Now, I can't guarantee 100% that he'd be all the way back to where Bourdreau is right now. But the best he can hope to do, given the situation, is potentially try to defend for 10th, because Alex Albert, take into consideration, is further up the road from either of them. He's currently in 11th in the championship. His annexed result was 9th place. So there's some big shifts in that power balance coming up. Moreover, we just see the first of them. Clinton Bourne into the pit lane to serve that drive through. That nets Byron Forrest an easy breezy 3rd place right now as we get into the last 20 minutes of racing here at round 3 of the championship. We did have a yellow flag. I do want to point this one out. There was a yellow flag trying to investigate who that's for. It's Casey Miles, currently down at turns 9 and 10, and that's not necessarily for an accident. You can see he's given way to 3 of the cars there, the 707, the 119, and the 998. That being Stephen Black, Christian LeBay, and Giovanni Badiali. Right now, on the way things have been going, 4.5 seconds up the road, with 19.5 minutes left to go in this race. Looks to be upsetting the power balance set in stone over the last 2 weeks of competition by Christian LeBay in the 119. Looking back to those previous wins, he won in Indianapolis and he won in New York. Right now, he doesn't look to be winning in Texas. It looks to be going into the hands here of Giovanni Bardiali. Only time will tell us different, though. And let's get a look onto the nearest fight on track. Alex Albert versus Vincent Simard. See if we can get on board with the number 36. You can see both of these drivers now taking a page out of LeBay's notebook. See if we can get on board with the defending of two here. Alex Albert, we get a look over the rear view just to give you an indication of just how hard it is to follow in the wake of another driver on this winding section of the track. We're on board with the 36 of Alex Albert. This is all in that fight of 8th place right now. Here with 18.5 minutes left to go, and already clear signs of that aero washout, because in these longer commitment corners where the front and back have got to connect up, you can see he's working with probably about 75% or less efficiency overall. I mean, this is, considering the early stages of GT3 in the modern day as we've come to know it, this could be even more dramatic than just a 75% overall efficiency for aeros. This could really be knocked all the way back to probably about 50. You can see, though, with a much better exit of turn 11, he's an omnipresent sight for Alex Albert. Vincent Simard looking up the inside in that blue number 120. Down towards turn 12. He's got clear line to the inside here. So what is Alex Albert's strategy? Runs high and snips the nose off of the 120. I don't think he was expecting that to go down that way, but he's committed to it. He's held on to the move. So heading down into turns 13 and 14 is where things narrow up massively. Very easy to spin the car here, as we've seen over the course of qualifying today. Neither of these two in through turns 15 and 16 seem to be having that problem right now. They do have to steer very well clear of those curbs to the right-hand side, just as they are down at turn 20. They are absolutely killer. Down through turns 17 and 18. Then comes turn 19 and turn 20. See, that's the curbs of doom there, and touching it was Alex Albert. That leaves him incredibly vulnerable, as having to back off almost a bit there was Vincent Simard. Now swerving in the back end of the 36, trying to find a way in, taunting almost Alex Albert on his way down towards turn 1. You can see committed to the inside, then looked away, then committed again. He'll find himself to the outside at turn 2, so he backs off. This is very bizarre stuff here between Albert and Simard. And see just how uncomfortable that's got to look for the GT3s at this time. I mean, this winding section, you can see it go all the way down onto the bump stops on either side of the suspension, and the car properly slinging itself back and forth, rocking the boat, as it were, on their way in towards turns 9 and 10. As we drop under that 16-minute mark, we're still watching here with the fight of 8th place. Alex Albert defending from Vincent Simard. You can see, had the idea to go for a late apex there, touch the inside sausage curb, and sorely regretted the decision there. Very nearly found himself spinning out. But as we've seen firsthand here from Alex Albert earlier on today, one tiny mistake on this track, especially through the third and first sectors, can lead to, frankly, massive consequences down the line. Catch on with these two in a moment's time, getting a look further around the field. We do find into the pits here, the 998 of Giovanni Bardiali. So a sudden dilemma arising for Bardiali. LeBay has taken the lead of this race. Now, we don't precisely know what's gone on here, but by the looks of it, that looks to be a disconnect for Bardiali. That is quite a shock there, folks, what we've just seen. Bardiali, after what appeared to be his finest hour, has been robbed of a victory by his own internet service provider. Well, I am not quite sure how to think about that one, but I imagine if you're Christian LeBay, I mean, you're going to be beaming ear to ear like the Cheshire Cat right now on the very news that now, due to nothing that's gone on track, that the main rival in this race for you is now vanished from sight, quite literally out of this race in its entirety. It's paved the sort of it's paved the yellow brick road, as it were, for another victory. 3 on the trot here for Christian Lebay. And let's not argue with what is, you know, still readily apparent. He has fought for this race. Let's not sit here and say that because of that disconnect that this is somehow a hollow and nullified victory. I'd never want that to go down on record, because he has still fought for this one. Admittedly, there has been a little bit of some assistance here, albeit not one that he's requested out of the internet service provider for Giovanni Battiali. That has got to have been an incredibly sore way for that race to go for him. And I suppose Lebay won't be arguing with 3 points on the table. Byron Forrest won't be arguing with his best result so far in the Competizione Performance League, 2nd place in the 824. We've been saying this as far back as his endeavours with Porsche back in GT4, that it has been a constant journey uphill for Byron Forrest. Right now, he's looking to revel in his best result in Competizione Performance League history. We will have to fact check that real quick, because there is one series that we've actually yet to cover here on Competizione Performance League. We are curious about the results out of. This is actually going to be his, well, the looks of things, joint best result, because it was 2nd place out of Watkins Glen. So actually, no, we do have more sufficient evidence, and moreover, we will have to touch back on that in just a moment's time. We do see most recent news here. Drive-through penalty for Carl David Bourdreau in the 962. So to give some clarification, this is not Byron Forrest's best result in Competizione Performance League. That actually goes to GT3 single race 9 at Indianapolis, where he took a decisive victory over Timodo Tosto and Karl Martel. However, in terms of a championship race, that point still resonates, that this is among his best results in a championship-governed race and not just single-time non-championship events. This is his all-time best result, or joint all-time best result, 2nd place, of which he has held for the last 2 rounds. This is the potential makings of some serious upward trajectory, I should say, for Byron Forrest. So right now we find ourselves in a very bizarre landscape here, much to the chagrin of Giovanni Battiali, who was looking on set here to upset the balance set in stone by Lebay to become the first new winner after Lebay here in the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. But sadly, it has been an age-old blight for these drivers of internet troubles, and that has now since struck the 998 for whatever reason. We'll have to try and chase exact notes as to what's gone on there. I'm pretty sure that was a disconnect. Yep. So yeah, confirmation at 2:33 local. It was a disconnect for Battiali. That is gut-wrenching. That truly is gut-wrenching. That one of the most unsatisfying things that can happen to you in the world of sim racing is to have a good result thrown out the back door by poor internet. Because it's something that you can't necessarily hold accountable to any one person anymore. It's a case of this has been something where agency has been completely ripped from your hands. That's what makes it such a frustrating thing. And I don't think I've ever seen rage harder than at something to do with a technical malfunction, because it strips all blame, all accountability, all agency, and then you're just left powerless and left to feel nothing but just pure hatred. And honestly, in his position, I would be boiling with rage. So 10 minutes left to go. Things have since boiled over for most regards of battling on track. We can see Stephen Black at the last recorded interval here. Looks to be about 2.1 seconds from Anthony Cote in a potential fight for 9th place now for Cote. This is looking a pretty solid endeavour here at the Circuit of the Americas. Of course, it has been a very up and down race for a lot of people. Looking at Cote, though, this is his first, seemingly his first race in the championship. So looking for Cote, this is going to be not too bad of a start. I mean, this is a real staging point for him here. Actually, no. So that's not the whole truth. He did compete in the opening round, but he was 12th place. He had a DNS appearance in round 2 of the championship. That does leave him in a bit of a precarious spot, like a few drivers that didn't appear in Watkins Glen. That is now going to count towards that drop rounds system to bring back up exactly the explanation on that. The drop point system is now active past round 3 of the championship. This will continue to update to reflect the worst or weakest result. If it is a DNS, where drivers have not signed out by the time that the race starts, it does count towards that, and ultimately you lose the option to have a drop round in its entirety. I suppose whilst we have the time as well, looking back around the field, it would be probably the best time now to remind you of the prize draw giveaway happening for this championship from the folks at Competizione Performance League. They're giving away 2 high-quality pairs of Fast Goose Sim Racing gloves. They'll be spec'd out to the winner's size and preferred colours. In order to be eligible for this prize draw, you have to have your name entered in the barrel and must have participated in at least 8 out of the 9 events in the championship, having finished all 8 of those with no DNF. So pretty high bar for entry here, but someone, or perhaps 2 people, are walking away with a pair of these Fast Goose Sim Racing gloves in what is a prize pool currently valued at a total of $100 Canadian. So a lot to look forward to towards the end of the season here. Right now, as things are starting to wrap up at the Circuit of the Americas, we get ever closer to the end of our time here in the United States at this leg of the GT3 Revival Series. We've currently completed 2 rounds, 2 under our belt here, 1 in Indianapolis, 1 in Watkins Glen. We're here right now in the trailing end of our 3rd round of the championship at the Circuit of the Americas. Then we'll be rounding things off in our American chapter back at Monterey County, California on November 11th at the Mazda WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, before we head across the pond over to the United Kingdom at the birthplace of the Jaguar XK, with the starting of those rounds being at Brands Hatch on November 18th, then over to Donington, then to Snetterton, then to Alton Park. Bear in mind, a big change in that structure is coming up. As for those rounds, it's double points, a double sprint race coming up, 2 30-minute races, and more to touch on that as there's new regulations coming in with a success ballast being introduced between races 1 and 2. More to touch on that when we head across the pond in about 2 weeks' time. Right now, those 7 minutes left to go here in the Circuit of the Americas, and things have simmered down. The fog of war, as it were, has lifted. They can see clearly now in the final laps of this race coming up. Closest gaps right now, I mean, they're all up in and around 5 seconds. It is a bit of a distant race after everything has cleared out. Closest gap we can observe firsthand here appears to be Albert to Simard. Now, these two shared in a pretty solid fight earlier on in today's race. They now find the roles reversed, with Simard up in front, Albert out back. The 36, about 2.6 seconds at the last interval to the number 120 up in front. You can see the physical gap there as they make their way around turn 16. We've remained in the last sort of 10 minutes here quite deliberately tight-lipped about any talks of penalties. We do believe there's a bit of a commentator's curse going about here at the Circuit of the Americas. It's happened all too many times now for it to not be at least partially believable. You can see some emerging gaps coming up here. Daniel Poulin to Richard Cecil, just under 4 seconds. Clinton Bourne to Daniel Poulin, just over 4 seconds. Alex Albert to Vincent Simard, 3.3 seconds. So that's since expanded, so the chances for these two to fight by the end of today's race are slimming. Whereas for Poulin to Cecil to fight, there is still a great chance here. Looking at where things could be concerned driver of the day-wise, I mean, you are not spoiled for choices here. Timo de Tosto, Byron Forrest, Daniel Poulin, all of them spring to mind. Richard Cecil as well. Vincent Simard for that matter at all. But it is so quite spread here that it is hard to give an exact answer one-to-one as to who's getting that driver of the day vote. Which is why, in the nature of interaction with our folks in the Twitch chat here, let's see if we can get a poll up for some of the driver of the day suggestions. Of course, we like to try and keep it relatively open-ended now for people inside of the community. We started this off with the High Caliber Community League over on the GT4 Challenge, and that's already worked quite well. As a matter of fact, it's now an officially recognised accolade at the end of every race, with the last 2 winners being Tom Wells and Stephen Sutton. Let's have a little look here. We're currently still on board with Poulin. One of the potential candidates, mind you, of a driver of the day vote. We'll run this poll for a few minutes before the end of today's race. So for anyone tuning in on the Twitch chat, we've just launched a poll there. 3 minutes in, well, 3 minutes 50 left to go in the race. 3 minutes left in this poll to decide driver of the day. Currently 4 named candidates being Vincent Simard, Byron Forrest, Timo de Tosto and Daniel Poulin. But we also have the option for other. I'd like to know what your potential picks would be. 3.5 minutes left to go in today's race. And currently all of the gaps we previously discussed have since opened up, therefore nullifying any chances here for some side-by-side racing unless something steps into the way. So it is going to be a bit of a tepid end to things here in the Circuit of the Americas, not to be unexpected given the grandiose nature of this track. We did have that theory running for some time that this could be what the outcome is looking like, where things do quiet down quite a way towards the end of today's race. Watching here with Timo de Tosto. His way down through turn 16, turn 17 and 18 coming up now. Just to report on the gaps as the data continues to fly through. Poulin has closed the gap up a little bit there. It was previously up in the range of the 4-second margin. Now that is since closed a little closer here to Richard Cecil's car. 3.1 seconds at the last recorded interval. Now with only 2.5 minutes left to go here. Christian Lebay already having started another flying lap, as it were. We are going to be heading on to the final lap next coming. So the race officially will end at the start of lap 28. But lap 27 is going to become what is effectively our final lap. We've already got some suggestions in there from Jason Bush in chat, Byron Forrest driver of the day. And right now, with very few other recognised votes on the current poll, I mean, that is swinging quite heavily in the direction of Byron Forrest. He had a very muddied start to that race. Obviously, was in that incident with Clinton Bourne, that side-by-side contact. Then it spilled over into the rows behind. Ultimately, Forrest found himself climbing back up that hill slowly but surely. And much as we've seen a very silent procession out of drivers earlier on in the race, such as Simard and Poulin, we've also seen very much so, if not paramount to that discussion today out of Byron Forrest. He has been a proper trooper in the face of certain adversity. Yeah, we've got 2 people in chat now backing the idea of Byron Forrest driver of the day. And with the poll coming to a close right about now, that currently leaves it currently in the courts that Byron Forrest is your official driver of the day. Now, the data will show on the Twitch chat that no one competed in the actual poll launched by Stream Elements, but it's been a case where we've already got vote of confidence there from 2 people in chat saying the same thing here, Byron Forrest driver of the day. But we'll be getting onto the discussion of that a little later on. We do see here with Christian Lebay, the current race leader, 27 laps strong here after what was a valiant fight with Giovanni Battiali. Ultimately, fate has dealt a cruel hand to the 998, but the 119, I don't think we'll be arguing too much with it, but I would have preferred to see a victory competed for on track rather than left into the hands of something as arbitrary as internet connection. He is showing lights there on his way down the back straight, knows that he's being watched for the camera there. We'll catch on with him towards the end of his last lap here in the Circuit of the Americas. Down towards the line, we see Daniel Poulin, number 44. Still has one more lap around the Circuit of the Americas here in round 3 of the championship. It's all dependent on when we see that 119 across the start-finish line. He's currently down through turns 12, 13 and 14. We'll be catching on board with Christian Lebay in a moment's time here. Oh, back on board with Lebay on that final lap here at the Circuit of the Americas. It has been definitely quite a mixed bag by all accounts. But for Christian Lebay, he had a pretty solid start by all accounts, went side by side with Badiali, had a great fight with him. Ultimately, fate has dealt a cruel hand for the 998, but it has not dealt a cruel hand here for the 119, as getting down out of turn 19, down towards turn 20 here. Fate has dealt him a 3 in a row of race victories here. Oh, hang on, I just said the completely wrong name of it. No, not the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. He's dealt 3 in a row in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. You can really tell that we're recording at the early hours of the morning here in the United Kingdom. 2:50 in the morning marks the hat-trick of victories here in Jaguar for Christian Lebay. That is incredibly bizarre. That's, it gets to be a case that just sort of rolls off the tongue, the name of that series. It's completely unconscious, that choice. Nonetheless, Christian Lebay is your race winner here in the Circuit of the Americas. 3 times on the trot. A very bizarre result for him today. Not one that he'll be arguing with, all things said and done. Byron Forrest to the line for his joint best result in a championship race here on the Competizione Performance League. And I should say this correctly now, in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. That one's going to come back to sting me later on. And driver of the day as well for the 824. Timo de Tosto on his way to the line on a brilliant result today. The number 58 on the podium at the end of round 3 of the championship. Great hustle by the 58 today. Richard Cecil not far from the line here will be finishing in 4th place. Daniel Poulin looking at a 5th place spot. Had it been maybe a few more laps, we could see the gap drastically draw down between himself and Cecil. It could have even been a fight here at the very, very end of today's race. A drive-through for the number 6, so things go from bad to worse here for Clinton Bourne. That is really just salt in the wounds, as across the line, a drive-through penalty in the second to last corner brings 30 seconds to the door of the number 6. That has got to be bitter. That really, really does. A day to forget then for Clinton Bourne. We'll get the full results up in a moment's time. But now, reflecting on what has been definitely a bit of a muddied race for Lebay. I mean, he had that less than ideal start, spent a lot of the time in the hot air of the leading 998. I think it was the moment that disconnect happened. A great weight had been lifted from the Jaguar. We saw this much more relaxed drive, and really rightfully so, finished 46 seconds up the road from anyone else on that field. There you can see the final results. Lebay, your winner 3 times on the trot in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, mistakenly identified as the GT4 Pro-Am Cup. We just got so used to saying that to where it's not even a conscious decision by us anymore. These are some long names. They need to reel that one in. Byron Forrest 2nd, Timo de Tosto 3rd, Richard Cecil 4th, Daniel Poulin 5th, Vincent Simard in 6th, Clinton Bourne in 7th, and Alex Arbour in 8th place. Anthony Cote 9th, Stephen Black in 10th, Carl David Bourdreau in 11th, and Casey Miles in 12th. 1 DNF today, Giovanni Badiali, 9 laps down from the checkered flag. Worst time of all to have a disconnect. But that's the end of the story today here in round 3 of the championship. You do have to bear with us over the, I would say, slight, very rapid and sudden deterioration of my mental state. I mean, it is, 2:53 in the morning. I've had 1 Red Bull, and that has evidently not been enough fuel in the tank for us here. So onwards and upwards, heading into the next round of the championship, looking at where we'll be. That's 3 rounds under our belt now, all 3 of which dominated by the 119 in various different ways. Heading into Laguna Seca at the final leg of our American chapter before we move over into the double stint rounds that comprise the British chapter from rounds 5 to 8. We find ourselves at the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca on November 11th. That's all from us here on TRTN. A very well done to our race winner today, then Christian Lebay, and a very well done to all of our participants and driver of the day as well, Byron Forrest, in the 824, 2nd place on his all-time best championship result. That's all from us here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Hopefully we'll remember the name of the series next time. Take care. Good night.